I'm Claire, and last Tuesday, my world ended. Michael, my husband of nearly a decade, died from a sudden heart attack in the middle of his workday. One moment, he was sending me silly texts about getting the real maple syrup, and the next, I was crumpled on the kitchen floor, the phone still in my hand after hearing his assistant's broken voice say the words no one should ever hear, Claire. He didn't make it. I don't remember much about that first hour, just this strange buzzing in my ears and the taste of copper in my mouth. My hands were shaking so violently I could barely call someone to pick up my daughter, Sophie, from school. She's only 8. Just 8. When I finally reached the hospital, Michael was already gone. They said it was massive, instantaneous. There's nothing anyone could have done, the doctor had murmured. But that didn't stop me from wishing I'd made him get a second opinion, that I'd insisted he take those chest pains more seriously, that I had hugged him longer that morning. I walked into the sterile hospital room and found him lying there like he was just napping, still warm, still mine. Except he wasn't anymore. That night I called my parents. I ached for comfort. My mom picked up after 5 rings, laughter and background music filtering through the line. Claire, can I call you back? We're in the middle of Vanessa's birthday dinner. I swallowed hard. Mom, Michael died today. There was a pause as if she'd misheard me. Then, in a voice that bordered on irritation, she said, "Oh, Claire, are you sure? I mean, maybe there's been a mistake." "I saw his body," I said flatly. "Well," she sighed, "this is shocking. But we've got caterers and guests here. We'll come by tomorrow once things settle down." I sat in stunned silence, the phone still pressed to my ear after she hung up. My dad called back a few minutes later, not to offer support or condolences, but to ask if Michael's life insurance was up to date. That night, I curled into bed with Sophie. She clutched one of Michael's unwashed shirts to her chest, breathing in what little was left of him. I didn't sleep. I couldn't. Grief doesn't let you rest. It grabs your lungs and tightens again and again, until breathing becomes effort, and silence feels louder than screams. The next morning, I made myself coffee I couldn't drink, and tried to organize the chaos. Funeral arrangements, documents, phone calls I didn't want to make. Everyone around me was kind. Friends, neighbors, even old college acquaintances reached out to offer support. But my own family? Silence. Except for a text from my mom that read, "Thinking of you. Let us know what time the service is." No offer to help. No mention of Sophie, no real grief, just obligation. Michael's funeral was held 4 days later. It was a bright, beautiful morning, completely at odds with what I felt inside. Sophie picked a blue dress, her daddy's favorite, and insisted on wearing it because he always said I looked like a princess. I did her hair the way Michael used to, weaving a braid along her temple, and prayed for strength. Michael's coworkers came in droves, some crying openly. They shared stories about his kindness, his jokes, his strange hatred for cilantro. They treated him like the giant he was. Meanwhile, my family, my parents and Vanessa texted 20 minutes before the ceremony to say they were stuck in traffic. When they did arrive, it was like they were attending a mildly inconvenient brunch. Vanessa whispered complaints about her dress. My dad checked his watch. My mom fake cried into a tissue that stayed suspiciously dry. That's when it hit me. The people who should have been my strongest support weren't just absent, that were hollow, apathetic, conditional. That night, after everyone had gone, I tucked Sophie into bed and found myself sitting alone in the dark kitchen. The ache was unbearable. Not just for Michael, but for the parents I'd always hoped would be there. When it really mattered, they had failed me on Sophie when we needed them the most. But I didn't know then that the worst part wasn't their neglect. It was still coming. The day after the funeral, I woke up to Sophie calling out in her sleep, her voice small and broken, whispering for her dad. I lay beside her, smoothing her hair and whispering stories about Michael, about how he made dinosaur-shaped pancakes, how he always packed her lunch with little notes, how he once learned to braid hair just so he could do hers on picture day. That morning was the first time I realized how much of Michael was still alive in our daughter. Her courage, her curiosity, her stubborn sense of fairness. But even that realization couldn't soften the sharp edge of what my parents did next. They showed up unannounced 2 weeks after the funeral. I hadn't spoken to them since that awful call, hadn't received anything beyond a few generic texts. So when I opened the door and saw them standing there, polished and pleasant, I froze. "We thought we'd check in," my mom said, breezing past me into the house like it was a casual Sunday brunch. "Is Sophie at school? Good, we can talk openly." I should have known. This wasn't a visit of concern. They made themselves comfortable in the living room while I, numb and disoriented, went through the motions of hospitality, coffee mugs, polite nods. It was only after my father carefully placed his mug on a coaster that he got to the point, Claire. We wanted to talk about your situation. My what? Your financial situation? My mother said smoothly. Now that you're adjusting, it took me a full minute to understand. They weren't here to grieve. They were here to claim. They wanted money, apparently. Michael's position and life insurance payout had sparked a fire of entitlement in them. My father said it plainly. We were thinking something substantial, say, 50% of the insurance payout. That would secure our retirement and still leave plenty for you and Sophie. I stared at them, the air thick around me. I thought of Michael, how meticulous he'd been with planning for Sophie's future, how he'd carried me through every hard moment with patience and grace. And now here, they were my own parents, trying to take what he left behind. When I said nothing, my mother added, we raised you. We paid for your education. We helped with your first house. We think it's only fair you support us now. That's when I lost it. I didn't raise my voice at first. I didn't need to. The fury in my words was enough. You weren't there when he died. You didn't come to comfort me. You barely acknowledged Sophie's grief. And now you think you deserve a reward. They were shocked. Maybe they thought I'd be too weak to stand up to them. Maybe they forgot I was no longer the girl they could guilt into compliance. You're being emotional, my father muttered. This is just practical planning. Get out, I said, Claire. I said, get out. They left, mumbling. About how ungrateful I was? My hands shook as I closed the door behind them later that day. Sophie surprised me. She had overheard more than I realized, seen their car from her classroom window. She asked if they had brought something for us. I told her the truth carefully. She was quiet for a moment, then asked, did they ask about Daddy's money? My heart cracked. Why would you ask that, sweetheart? I heard Grandpa at the funeral. He told Uncle James we were going to get a lot of money now that Daddy died. I didn't even know what to say. Sophie looked at me with that wise, heartbreaking look she gets sometimes, so much like Michael. I would give all the money in the world just to have Daddy back. She said softly. Me too, baby, I whispered. Me too. That night, while I cried in the shower, Sophie was quietly working on something in her room. She wouldn't tell me what it was, only that it was for Sunday. She said she had an idea, something she learned from her dad. Sunday came fast. My parents had invited Misam and me really for a family meeting. They even insisted I bring Sophie. I almost refused, but something in Sophie's voice when she said, I need to go, for Daddy, made me change my mind. She clutched a manila envelope the entire car ride there, her small hands trembling slightly but her eyes full of steel. I have something to say, she whispered, as we pulled up to the house I used to call home. They need to hear it. And oh, they would. The moment we stepped into my parents' living room, I knew it wasn't just a family meeting. It was an ambush. They'd invited a full audience. My aunts, uncles, even Vanessa perched on the arm of the sofa like she was holding court. My dad sat in his recliner like a judge ready to hand down a verdict. My mom greeted us with that rehearsed expression of concern, her voice just a little too sweet. Claire, Sophie, come in. Everyone's waiting. I stayed standing, Sophie's hand in mine. I glanced around the room and felt years of memories, birthdays, Christmases, moments I had tried to forget come flooding back. Now tainted with betrayal, we have important matters to discuss, my father began. Then let's discuss them, I replied, my voice even, and whatever you have to say, you can say it in front of Sophie. My mother blinked. Claire, she's just a child if it's not appropriate for her to hear. It's not appropriate for you to ask, I interrupted. This concerns her future too. My father cleared his throat. Very well. We believe that given your current situation and the financial stability you've received since Michael's passing, it's only fair that you assist the family. I said nothing. I wanted to hear just how deep this entitlement went. We've prepared a breakdown, he continued, handing me a printed document. We're proposing 50% to your mother and me, and an additional 15% to Vanessa. She's struggled with her art career and deserves a fresh start. I skimmed the paper. It wasn't just vague numbers. They had actual dollar amounts listed as if they'd done the math already. As if this was a business deal. You want 65% of the money, Michael? Left for me and Sophie, I said flatly. The money he earned, the money he planned carefully to support his daughter after his death. It's about family, Claire, my mother insisted. We supported you when you were young. We made sacrifices. The same way you supported me when my husband died. I shot back. Uncomfortable silence filled the room. My Aunt Rita shifted in her seat, clearly embarrassed. Vanessa just smirked, as if all of this confirmed some private justice she'd been waiting for. We've apologized for the timing, my dad said stiffly, but you have to understand we had guests at Vanessa's party. We couldn't just leave. I laughed bitterly. You could if you chose not to. Don't be dramatic, Vanessa snapped. You're financially set now. Don't act like sharing is going to destroy you. Mom and Dad gave everything for us. For you, I corrected. They gave everything for you. I got hand-me-downs and early curfews. You got private tutors and applause for showing up. This is getting emotional, my father said sharply. Yes, I replied. It is, because this isn't just about money. It's about you not showing up when it mattered most. Not for me. Not for your granddaughter. My mother looked ready to object, but before she could speak, Sophie stepped forward. I have something to say. Her voice cut through the room like glass on tile. Everyone turned to look at her. My mom forced a smile. Sweetheart, the adults are just talking. This is about my dad, Sophie said firmly, standing straighter. So, I think I get. She pulled the manila envelope from her backpack and walked over to my father. I made this for you. He opened it, confusion on his face. Inside was a single page. I leaned slightly to see and my breath caught. It was a hand-drawn invoice at the top. Bill for real, love and support. Below that, in Sophie's neat, careful handwriting, being there when Daddy died, $0. Not provided helping Mommy when she was sad, $0. Not provided hugging me when I cried, $0. Not provided being real grandparents, priceless not paid on at the bottom, total earned, $0. My father's hands shook. My mother's face crumbled. Vanessa stared at Sophie like she was seeing her for the first time. That's why you came, right? Sophie asked. For money? Well, this is what you earned. Silence. Not just silence, but shameful silence. The kind that settles like dust over everything once the truth has been spoken. I stepped beside Sophie and put my arm around her. We're done here, I said quietly. Don't contact us again unless it's to apologize and mean it. Then, we turned and walked out. Outside, I knelt beside Sophie and looked her in the eyes. You were amazing. She looked down at the ground. Was I right, Mom? About what Daddy would have wanted? I smiled through my tears. You were exactly right? The days after the confrontation felt strangely calm like the eye of a storm. The tension was still there, swirling at the edges of my life, but for a moment I could breathe. Sophie seemed lighter too. She didn't say much about what had happened at my parents' house, but every now and then she would glance at me with that quiet, knowing look. The same one Michael used to give me when he knew I was about to fall apart but didn't want to push me then. On Saturday morning, I opened the filing cabinet in our home office to go through Michael's financial documents. I wasn't looking for anything specific, just trying to feel like I had some kind of control over what came next. Instead, I found something else. A sealed envelope. My name on the front, Michael's handwriting. I didn't open it right away. I sat there for a long time, holding it against my chest like a lifeline. When I finally broke the seal, I unfolded the letter with shaking hands. My dearest Claire, if you're reading this, it means the doctor's concerns about my heart were more serious than I let on. I didn't want to scare you. I just wanted us to live fully and without fear, but I also wanted to be prepared, just in case. I've updated our will and insurance. Everything goes to you with detailed provisions for Sophie's education and future. There's also a separate trust set aside for her that no one can touch, not even you, unless it's for her schooling or medical care. Please respect that. I know you will. Your father approached me twice about investment opportunities. They weren't investments. They were veiled requests for money. I declined politely. I'm telling you this now not to create conflict, but because I know he'll come to you next. Don't let him manipulate you. This money is for Sophie. It's not meant to clean up anyone else's mess. I wish I could be there to help you through this. I wish I could hold you right now. But please know that my greatest joy in life was being your husband and Sophie's dad. Live. Really live. And protect our girl. Always. I broke down right there on the floor. He knew. He'd known they would try something. And still, he'd tried to protect me from the financial fallout. And from the emotional weight of knowing my own parents were circling like vultures that night. I called Robert, Michael's friend, and our estate attorney to confirm that everything was indeed as Michael described. He was kind but direct. Everything is airtight, he said. Claire, your parents have zero legal standing. They can't touch the trust. They can't touch the insurance. It's all yours and Sophie's exactly the way Michael intended. And if they try to contest it, they'll lose. And they'll look terrible doing it. It should have brought relief. And in a way, it did. But mostly, it just made me ache. Michael had carried this worry alone, quietly building protections, never burdening me. That was who he was. Always thinking ahead, always putting Sophie and me first. The next evening while Sophie and I were having dinner, my phone lit up. A voicemail from my father, demanding a family meeting on Sunday afternoon. This concerns all of us, he said. Bring Sophie. I stared at the phone for a long time, then looked at my daughter, calmly eating her pasta and reading the back of the cheese box like it was a novel. He wants us to go back, I said. Do we have to? She asked, not looking up. I think we should, I replied carefully. Not because they deserve it, but because some battles have to be finished face to face. She nodded slowly, then reached for the manila folder she had used the week before. Can I bring something again? She asked. Not an invoice this time. Something else. A message. From me and Daddy, I smiled. You can bring anything you want. That night, after she went to bed, I sat in our quiet living room and let my thoughts drift. Michael's letter was tucked safely in my nightstand. His words echoed in my mind, clearer than ever. Protect our girl, always. And so I would. The next confrontation wouldn't be about compromise, it would be about closure. Sunday afternoon arrived with a stillness that felt heavy. Sophie and I dressed in quiet resolve, neither of us speaking much, but both understanding exactly what this day meant. As we drove toward my childhood home, she clutched a new envelope. Against her chest, a message from me and Daddy, she said again. I didn't ask what it contained. I trusted her. Somehow I knew it would speak louder than anything I could say. When we pulled into the driveway, I noticed right away that my parents hadn't invited just us. Cars I recognized from my extended family, Uncle James, Aunt Rita, even Vanessa's SUV were parked out front. Of course, they'd assembled a crowd again, hoping peer pressure would bend me. We rang the doorbell, and my mother opened it, dressed as if for church, wearing that thin, brittle smile that always preceded manipulation. Claire, Sophie, come in. Everyone's waiting. We walked through the hallway where I used to hang my backpack after school, past the living room where every holiday photo had been taken. Now it felt cold. Staged a courtroom more than a home. My father sat in his recliner again, the same document folder on the table beside him. Vanessa perched smugly on the edge of the sofa, tapping her perfectly manicured nails on her phone. My relatives looked up with varying degrees of discomfort, some trying not to meet my eyes. We'll get right to the point, my father began. We've reviewed the situation and feel that our proposal is both fair and necessary. He motioned toward the paper again. 50% for your mother and me, 15% for Vanessa. The rest, of course, remains with you and Sophie. No, I said calmly. He blinked. Excuse me, no, I repeated. Not now, not ever. That money was left by Michael for his daughter. Not for you, not for your retirement. Not to cover for years of poor planning. Claire, Vanessa interrupted, you're being selfish. Mom and Dad supported you your whole life. I turned to her. And what exactly did they support me through, Vanessa? When Michael died, they were too busy lighting birthday candles. When I was planning his funeral, they were choosing outfits. When Sophie cried herself to sleep, they were calculating life insurance. That's not fair, my mother whispered. No, I replied. What's not fair is burying your husband and having your parents show up days later asking for their share. My father stood up. We raised you, Claire. We deserve some respect. You don't get to demand respect when you've shown none, I said. Then, before anyone else could speak, Sophie stepped forward. I have something to say. All eyes turned to her again. She opened her envelope and pulled out a piece of paper. It wasn't an invoice this time. It was a drawing colored carefully in soft pencil. At the top, in big block letters, it said, "What family means to me." Below it, she had drawn 3 figures: herself, me, and Michael. We were standing together, smiling, holding hands under a bright sky. In the corner were 2 smaller figures, my parents, both standing far away, turned in the opposite direction. Above them, in a child's scrawl, it read, "Family doesn't ask for money when you're sad." My mother's hand flew to her mouth. My father stared like he'd been slapped. I made this at school, Sophie said softly, because I needed to show them what Daddy taught me. That family helps. Family listens. Family loves. She turned to face them. You didn't come when we needed you, but you came when you thought there'd be money. That's not what Daddy would want. No one spoke. Not a word. Vanessa lowered her phone. My aunt looked down. My uncle cleared his throat but said nothing. I knelt beside Sophie and took her hand. We're going now, I said to the room. You don't need to call. You don't need to text. If you ever want to be in our lives again, it starts with an apology, not a negotiation. I looked straight at my parents. And this time, it's not just words I'll need. It's actions. We turned and left as the door shut behind us. I didn't feel anger anymore. I felt something quieter, but stronger. Finality. In the car, Sophie sat quietly, staring out the window. Do you think they'll change? She asked. I don't know, I said honestly, but we don't have to wait for them to figure it out. We've got each other. That's more than enough. The following week passed in strange silence. There were no more calls, no more voicemails, not even one of my mother's signature guilt-laced texts. For once, it was quiet. But it wasn't peace. It was a pause, a deep breath before the next move. I stayed alert, watching my inbox, screening every unknown call, and then, as expected, it arrived. A formal letter, typed cold, signed by my father, Claire. Given your refusal to be reasonable and your clear disregard for your family's well-being, we are left with no choice but to reconsider our relationship with you and with Sophie. We had hoped to settle this matter privately, but if you persist in withholding what we believe is a fair distribution, we will be forced to explore legal alternatives. Let us know if you wish to revisit this discussion. We urge you to think carefully for Sophie's sake. Richard Collins. There it was. Not just manipulation, a threat. I forwarded the letter to Robert, our attorney. His response was swift, empty, legally baseless, but good to keep for the record. It didn't surprise me, but it still hurt. Later. That evening, Sophie found me at the kitchen table, staring blankly at the letter. Did they write something bad again? She asked, crawling into my lap. They're still trying, I said, brushing her hair back. But they can't touch what Daddy left for us. She nodded. I know. He made sure. I held her tighter than usual that night, because no amount of money, no will, no legal document, nothing could truly protect her from the ache of family betrayal, and I'd be damned if I let it happen again. 2 weeks later, my mother took a different approach. She showed up at Sophie's school. The principal called me immediately, her voice calm but firm. Claire, your mother arrived during dismissal. She asked to speak to Sophie. We did not allow it, per your instructions. By the time I got there, she was standing in the parking lot, looking lost and small in a way that didn't suit her usual posture of control. You're turning everyone against us, she accused the moment she saw me. No, I replied, steady. You did that all on your own. You can't keep Sophie from us, she said, her voice trembling. Yes, I can, I answered, and I will until you stop treating her like a means to an end. Her expression cracked for just a second. You're our daughter, and that used to mean something, I said. But being a parent isn't about titles. It's about actions. She tried again. Please, Claire, we miss her. We miss you. You miss the money, I replied. You miss the access, the power, not me, and definitely not Michael. She didn't deny it. Instead, she looked down, defeated. We're your parents, and I'm Sophie's mother, I said. I will never let anyone Evan Blood exploit her. Not again. Then I walked away. For 2 months, we heard nothing, and in that silence, something remarkable happened. We healed. Not all at once. Grief isn't linear. But little by little, Sophie began to laugh again. Not the forced smile she wore for my sake, but the real kind, the kind that lit up her whole face like Michael's used to. She started sleeping through the night. She asked to visit the lake where she used to fish with her dad. She even baked cookies with Linda, Michael's mother, laughing at how they always turned out, slightly burnt. Just like when he tried, Daniel, Michael's brother, moved back from Japan. I made a promise to him, he said quietly one evening. I promised I'd be here for you both, and I meant it. And one day, out of nowhere, a letter arrived. This time it was handwritten. Simple, plain envelope. No signature line, no legal threats. Just this, Claire and Sophie. We've spent the last few months thinking about what we did. And how much damage we caused, there's no excuse. We let fear and entitlement take over. We failed you both. And we failed Michael's memory. We don't expect forgiveness. Only the chance someday to show you that we can change, not with words. With actions, I read it 3 times before I showed it to Sophie. What do you think? I asked her. She was quiet for a long moment. Then she said something that took my breath away. I think Daddy would want us to give people a chance, if they earn it. I nodded. We don't have to let them back in. I know, she said. But we can leave the door open, just a little. A year after Michael's death, we held a memorial gathering on his birthday. It wasn't somber like the funeral had been. This was something different, gentler, warmer. We set up tables in the backyard, grilled his favorite foods, played the playlist he used to hum along to while folding laundry. People brought memories instead of flowers. Daniel flew in again and helped Sophie put together a photo wall. Kevin's parents, Linda and Charles, arrived early with photo albums and framed snapshots I'd never seen before Michael as a boy, covered in dirt and grinning next to a dog named Duke. Sophie stood in front of those photos for a long time. Touching the glass gently before the evening ended, she stood on the back steps with a notebook in hand and read a short letter she had written. Dear Daddy, we miss you every day, but we laugh again. We eat pancakes. We go fishing with Grandpa Charles, and Mommy doesn't cry in the bathroom anymore. We're okay, but we still wish you were here. Love, Sophie. There wasn't a dry eye in the yard. Notably absent were My parents, I hadn't invited them. Not because I wanted to punish them, but because I needed this day to belong to Michael. Not to old wounds or unearned apologies. Just to love and remembrance. But they weren't gone from our story, because a month later, on Sophie's 9th birthday, I received another letter. This one came with a modest gift of beginner astronomy kit, not a pink princess dress, not cash, but something Sophie actually loved. The card was simple. We remembered you loved stars. We're still trying to be better. If you'd like to see us, even just for ice cream, we would be honored. I hesitated. But when I showed the note to Sophie, she looked up and said, I think we should go just for a little bit. In public? So we did. I chose a neutral, friendly spot. Her favorite ice cream parlor, 1 block from our home. I laid out the ground rules in a reply note. Talk about money. No probing questions. No expectations. To their credit, they honored every boundary. They asked about school. About her science fair project. About the cookies she'd learned to bake with Linda. They smiled. They listened. And they left exactly when I said it was time to go. For the first time in years, they treated Sophie like a person, not a pawn. In the months that followed, we allowed limited structured visits. I never forgot what they had done, and I didn't pretend everything was fine. But they showed upon time, respectful, quiet, no pressure, just presence. One afternoon, as Sophie and I sat by the lake where we had scattered some of Michael's ashes, she leaned her head on my shoulder. I think Grandpa and Grandma are different now, she said. They listen more, maybe, I said. People can change slowly, but they have to mean it. She nodded, then added, I think the invoice helped. I laughed softly. You think so? She looked out across the water. Daddy said people don't always hear you until you put it on paper. She skipped a stone perfectly. 3 bounces in, smiled. I miss him every day, she whispered. So do I said, wrapping an arm around her. But he's still with us. In you, in me. In everything we stand up for. And that was true, because what Michael left us wasn't just a life insurance policy or a carefully written will. He left us with values, with the quiet strength to say no, with the wisdom to draw lines, and the courage to leave a door cracked open for those who prove they deserve another chance. The family we had wasn't the one I was born into. It was the one we chose to keep, and the one that chose to keep us. Michael's legacy wasn't money. It was this life we rebuilt, one boundary, one hug, one honest moment at a time. And that is how we healed together.